It cannot be the police alone that must deal with this issue. And what we need is an intergovernmental, interdepartmental approach towards this. We need to change the social fabric. We need to address the socioeconomic issues that face those communities so that we change the environment from which the gangs are finding this environment as a foothold for them to conduct their gang activities. And that it needs to be addressed, and that cannot be the police's job alone.
Certainly. But from the police themselves then, there's been a lot of criticisms, people saying that the police aren't clear about how to deal with their part of the deal then in as far as trying to deal with gangsterism is concerned. Do you think that they have a strategy at all?
Yes, I do believe they have a strategy. I do believe they have a strategy, but I believe their strategy will make the necessary impact if we also at the same time address the other social and economic issues. And the reason why I say that is between April and June this year, they've made more than 180 arrests that is gang-related. They have seized 217 firearms, gang-related, and they have made 219 arrests that can be connected to the gang shootings during those 3 months. So there's clearly an indication that they are successful in the police operations. What we now need to see is that we do everything jointly. We can't have the police coming in and do a crisis management of a situation. We need to have a process where we say, while the police are continuing with this kind of work, local government is doing this, national government is doing that, the provincial government is doing that, Department of Education is doing this, health is doing that, so that we clearly have a clear indication, a roadmap on how we're going to eradicate this problem of gang violence.
All right, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but let me bring in Mr. J.P. Smith here and get your view on how analysts have seen what is going on in Cape Town. Some of them have told me, for instance, that gangs in Cape Town's poor neighborhoods have grown in brutality and sophistication. Mr. Smith, do you agree?
I think that before you take the debate in a different direction, I do want to get back to something that MP Van Wyk said, and that is that it is encouraging to hear the figures she's quoting around gang-related arrests and shooting arrests. Those are the stats we have been asking for. So it's good to hear that.
All right. Why is it good? Why is it good?
Those are translating into convictions, because for me at the moment, and for us in the provincial government, what we've been looking at is whether we're achieving a meaningful conviction rate on any of this that sees the purple people who are instigating the violence and shooting and engaging in the shooting and calling for the shootings to be convicted and taken out of circulation. And unfortunately, from the limited stats I have seen, I think that at the moment is a key weak area. As for the rest of what local government and other government departments do, I must agree. I do think that it is a whole of society policing approach that's required, and not just a police approach alone. I think that is clear from international evidence all around. And that's why we have repeatedly called on the police to create some kind of joint task force so we can bring that intergovernmental solution together in a far more coordinated manner.
Okay, you know what, I'm going to stick with what you are saying here, because you seem to be suggesting that perhaps the work done is not transparent, that not everybody knows the stats.
Look, I think provincial government has struggled to get some of the stats. There have been some questions that they've asked in provincial and national legislatures by way of getting insight into these stats. I know that the provincial government is struggling to exercise its oversight role, and for that reason is trying to codify that role in the new community safety bill that they're putting out. But that's maybe a bit of a red herring to proceed on. I think the critical issue is that in due course we must get clear insight into what the conviction rate is for the gang-related shootings. It's great to hear that people have been arrested. It's equally the city's gang unit that we've created, our 6-man gang unit that we're expanding by 8 members now, have achieved about 130 arrests since its inception in December. What we must see is how many of those end up at a conviction rate. Otherwise, to arrest and release people by itself is of limited value. But if you want to take the conversation in direction of the additional things that government should be doing, I think that is a useful and valuable conversation around what the rest of society is doing in the city. For instance, everything from a dedicated policing unit that deals with our social housing to the eviction of drug dealers and criminals from our housing stock, to additional outside experts and researchers
All right.
in the ceasefire program, our youth academy, our school resource officer programs that are about to start, and our new law enforcement reservist program.
All right. Now I'll come back to some of those things because I'm just getting a little worried here, Ms. Van Wyk, that there is no clear direction where these things are concerned. Because if the provincial government is not clear, does not have all the information necessary, then perhaps there's a breakdown of communications, at the very least. And some may say the issue is being politicized.
Well, that would be a shame if that's the case, and I do not think that's anybody's intention to do it. I mean, there has been a call, and that's one of the biggest criticisms from the side of SAPS as well, is the fact that the ceasefire initiative did not really define their role as well. And if you take a look at the ceasefire initiative as it was originally done in the States, the essential part of that ceasefire initiative is around the involvement of your law enforcement agencies, as well as Mr. Smith correctly states, your justice system, your convictions. So that it forms a very integral part of it. I must say that we have asked, originally in our presentation that we've received in the Police Portfolio Committee, we also did not receive the statistics that is actually speaking to this. And we have requested those statistics, and I've given them a deadline. I think it's the end of this week where we want these statistics to be given to us as well, more detailed statistics. But I do also think that it's not true that we do not have conviction rates. We all know of gang members and gang leaders who are imprisoned for many, many, many years. The problem is also, and that's something that we need to address as a society as well, and as government at different levels, is that in many ways, and the gangs operate even while they are in prison. They still get instructions out to gang members that are on the streets. There's still that kind of interaction. So one needs to address this thing from that perspective as well.
Okay. All right, let me bring in Dr. Langa. Dr. Langa, I'm going to bring you in by way of reading an email from Faisal in Mayfair, who says, gangsterism in South Africa is a result of historically impoverished societies being dislodged during the days of apartheid and having to fend and survive in other impoverished areas. The solution is a complex, he says, is a complex one, of trying to get the society out of the grip of poverty and to have an efficient, corrupt-free police force steering the path of that society. We should not allow Pagad to act as our police forces, goes on to say. This is an extreme vigilante group intent on steering us down the path of Islamism, which will lead us to greater anarchy. That's Faisal in Mayfair. Dr. Langa, what do you think about this email?
I think Faisal is spot on because the issue around gangs is not new in South Africa, but also if you have to look at it, it is more prevalent in your impoverished communities. And of course, I think it talks to the root causes of the problem. It's more around socio-economic factors. It's more around issues of inequality. But I think maybe coming back, to the issue here, around where now we want to reduce the problem through a policing issue. I think I'm quite worried around that. But I think around the proposed sort of intergovernmental strategy, I think that is the way to go, because all along we have always been seeing gang problem as an issue that the police alone need to address. And for me, I think it goes back to where we need to really try and understand, what are the causes of, gang violence. And also around where all of a sudden, I'm also concerned where we start talking about, the conviction rate, is it high or low and all that. Because for me, yes, people that, commit some of these crimes, of course, need to be arrested. But also, once people are arrested, what happens in prison? Are prison really also solving the problem of, gangs in our communities? Because in our experience, the comment that was made earlier on, even when some of the guys are arrested, they can still, operate, from prison. So I think we need to come up with solutions that are going to address the socioeconomic problems that are facing many of these, communities.
But here's a very good question that comes through on SMS, and again, I'm going to ask you, Dr. Langa, to respond to it. It says the question is, why is it prominent in some and not in other societies with similar conditions? It might just be human condition.
There are all kinds of factors. Xolani, especially when you look at if we were to use, the Western Cape as an example, but also what was reported in the media, which I also found it very interesting, that in somewhere like in the Free State, 2 weeks ago, kids have not been going to school. And when you look at that community, historically there were no gangs like in the area. But for that 2 weeks, kids were not able to go to school because there was gang violence in that area. And of course, then it talks to the issue like around all these inequalities, where all of a sudden, even in places where historically there were no gangs, all of a sudden, do you think like an increase like around young people getting involved in gangs? But also here the issues like around gender, where if you were to look at who are the gang members, many of them are like young males who are unemployed, and I guess being a gang member, it provides all kinds of meanings in a situation where there's like a sense of hopelessness, there's a sense of like feeling worthless. So being a gang member, somehow you feel worthy, you feel, respected. Okay. So those are like the things that we need to try and think like around how do we address, all these issues.
I think it's important that we also should broaden. It's not just the Western Cape, but we're seeing this in other parts of the country as well. Reverend Mishwe is here with me. Mfundisi, good morning.